Science is important for a person of faith for many reasons, but perhaps the most important is that through science we're learning about God's creation and the many wonderful things that He has made for us. Such a knowledge will inevitably lead us to a better appreciation of our Father in heaven. But one of the most amazing things that God has made is the animals. The animals were truly a gift from God, part of the creation that we find the most marvelous, the most beautiful, the elegant way in which they move. We find them just endlessly fascinating. And they're arguably the part of God's creation that we have loved the most. We have made pets of them, from dogs and cats to all variety of farm animals, even scorpions and tarantulas to some. This is a picture of my dogs, no longer with me. All died of old age, but I sure did love them, and I sure did thank God for them. Well, one of my favorite areas of animal biology is animal behavior because of the tremendous intelligence that has been demonstrated by observations of animal behavior. Let me illustrate a few examples from animals that don't even have a brain. Ants don't even have a brain. They just have a ganglia of neurons that serve this purpose. But even without a brain, they are exhibiting some complex cooperative behaviors. For example, this is a leafcutter ant that you see here. Leafcutter ants are called that because they cut leaves. Been observed cutting leaves in mass numbers and hauling these big pieces of leaves off to their hive. Well, rightly so, people that observe this assume that the ants were eating the leaves, but they're not. The ants aren't eating the leaves. Instead, what they're doing is when they get these leaves underground, they are chewing them into a pulp, and then they're feeding this to a garden that they're growing underground. These ants are engaged in horticulture. They're growing a garden of fungus. They feed this garden these chewed up leaves that they bring down. They harvest from this garden. They stack up what they've harvested and use that for later consumption. It's amazing. Cooperative behavior in an animal that, again, doesn't even have a brain. But similar to them are the leaf weaver ants that you see here. Leaf weaver ants, as the name suggests, weave together leaves. Well, they do this without any apparent foreman on site. One of the big mysteries in these cooperative behaviors is who's telling them what to do. Entire teams of ants will assemble along a leaf to hold it in place. Entire teams. Other ants will serve as the seamstress. But what they use to sew these leaves together alone is interesting. It's their larvae. These larval ants make a silken strand when stimulated. And so their older brothers will bring them up from the hive, and while other ants are holding these leaves in place, will use them to sew or weave these leaves together. But again, the big mystery is, where's the foreman? Who's telling these ants what to do? They seem to all know what to do and then exactly when to do it. It's what's called a hive mentality. But how are they communicating? Animal communication is one of the big unknowns, one of the big mysteries. Several forms of communication are widely recognized, but poorly understood. We have lots of visual displays. All kinds of posturing communicates information, but some more complex visual displays are used as well, like the dances performed by field hens in competition, or the birds of paradise, elaborate dances that these animals perform. There's also all sorts of vocal communications that animals use. Think of the complex vocalizations of your whales or your dolphins, the croaking of bullfrogs to attract mates, or the warning calls from monkeys when predators are in the area. But dolphins have calls unique to their identity. And oddly, though, again, for all these forms of communication, none of this has been translated. The only communication that we've been able to translate thus far is from the honeybee, shown here. Honeybees are engaged in communicating to the hive the location of food source. What you see in this video is a scout bee that has returned from finding food and is in the process of communicating that information to the hive in what's called a Waggle Dance. It's a little figure-8 dance that this bee does in the entrance of the hive, on top of the cones right there in the entrance of the hive, surrounded by observers. The scout bee does this little dance. And in this dance, it communicates a location of food to the hive. The instructive part of the dance is in the straight portion of the dance. It's in that portion that the bee waggles its abdomen vigorously and emits strong vibrations in addition to an audible buzz during the straight part of its dance. Well, the angle of the straight part communicates to the hive the location of the food in relation to the sun. It's the angle to the sun. The length of time that the scout bee wiggles its abdomen communicates to the hive the distance to the food, where 1 second of waggle equals 1 kilometer. It's a tremendous example of animal communication, communicating specific information. But what I think it tells us is how little we really understand animal communication. Because if bees are transmitting specific information to a hive in such a way, I think we have to assume that other animals are equally communicating specific information, especially the higher animals like your birds or your mammals. Well, a recent discovery was made by the University of Frankfurt. University of Cambridge, discovered a remarkable design feature in this leafhopper insect. It jumps as its primary mode of movement and does so over incredible distances and speeds. It jumps at a rate of 5 meters per second. As such, a mechanism to critically control the timing of its jump is necessary. Even a minuscule discrepancy between the two legs when they jump could send this insect into hopelessly out of control yaw rotation. Well, to accomplish this precision jump, the leafhopper was designed with hind leg joints with gears. Curved cog-like strips of opposing teeth intermesh and rotate just like the mechanical gears that we make. Well, the lead researcher, Malcolm Burrell, stated this about its design feature. He said, "The gears in the Isis hind leg bear remarkable engineering resemblance to those found on every bicycle and inside every car gearbox. Each gear tooth has a rounded corner at the point it connects to the gear strip, a feature identical to man-made gears such as bike gears, essentially a shock-absorbing mechanism to stop teeth from shearing off. The gear teeth on the opposing hind leg lock together like those in a car gearbox, ensuring almost complete synchronicity in leg movement." But of course, this extraordinary illustration of design and God's creation is dismissed as an evolutionary artifact. Malcolm Burrell states this: "These gears are not designed. They're evolved, representing high speed and precision machinery evolved for synchronization in the animal world." Well, more than any other design feature found in the creation, the ability of animals to fly has caused us to marvel. From the smallest insect to the largest soaring bird, the ability of animals to fly has been a great source of awe and envy. They move with such grace and such elegance. They're able to traverse such great distances with ease. A bird can effortlessly glide or catch a thermal and ride it skyward. But travel for humans has always been very laborious, especially over rough terrain or elevation. Thus, we've studied birds and the ways they fly and have used this information to develop our own technologies even. Well, the mechanism used for animal migration has puzzled scientists for years. We have found that animals migrate by various measurements. Some migrate by the sun, some migrate by the stars, some migrate by landforms or landmarks. But all of these forms of migration have been shown to be learned behaviors, that they've learned these routes themselves. But there are a few exceptions. We can point to some birds that travel unguided and do so over great distances. Let me give you a couple examples. This is the Bristle-thighed Curlew. The Bristle-thighed Curlew migrates unguided and nonstop 5,000 miles from Alaska to tropical Pacific Islands. This is the short-tailed Shearwater, who similarly migrates unguided 8,000 miles from Australia all the way to Alaska. And again, both of these birds migrate unguided. Their parents leave before they have fledged. And as soon as they're able to make the trip, they leave by themselves and travel that entire distance unguided and are able to land very precisely on the same beach. Some have been shown to come back to the same tree year after year. Well, not just birds that do these kinds of things, even the monarch butterfly. Extraordinarily, the monarch butterfly migrates from all over North America down to Mexico, from as far away as Nova Scotia, 3,100 miles. Some of these monarchs migrate to form these enormous breeding colonies in Mexico. And then after they mate, they migrate back. But none of the monarchs have ever made the trip before. None of them have made the trip before. Something just suddenly tells them to make that trip and when to make it. And it's all pre-programmed. It's all programmed into this butterfly to make this extraordinary migration. Well, the ability of animals to migrate in such a precise way has been intensely studied. The carrier pigeon, or what is also called the homing pigeon, has been intensely studied. It is able to travel up to 500 miles per day and has been used by us to send messages all the way back to the time of the ancient Egyptians. We've used these in wars. In fact, in both world wars, carrier pigeons were used. And true story, 250,000 pigeons were used by the UK forces in World War II, and 32 of them were awarded the Medal of Valor. True story. Well, recent research with homing pigeons done by the University of Frankfurt has shown that pigeons are able to use the Earth's magnetic field to migrate because they have a sophisticated device called a magnetometer embedded in the neurons in their beaks. The lead researcher, Gerda Fleischner, described the discovery. Iron-containing particles, she says, of magnemite and magnetite in the dendrites of sensory nerve cells are arranged in a complex three-dimensional pattern with different spatial orientation designed to analyze the three components of the magnetic field vector separately, thus acting as a three-axis magnetometer. These pigeons were designed with a sophisticated three-axis magnetometer right there in their beak, in the dendrites of the sensory nerve cells right there in their beak. It's tremendous. Well, when we consider the depth of God's love shown to us by the death of his Son, Jesus Christ, we should not be surprised to find our world has been so well prepared by our Father in heaven. When we discover these spectacular examples of engineering and artistic design in the animal world, it should have led to the conclusion that these things were created. But today, evolutionists stand fast with their faith that these things formed all on their own through purely natural processes. This world was equipped with everything we would need in terms of material and energy, but it was also made to be beautiful and pleasing because our Father loves us that much. It was made with things like animals that have brought such joy and comfort to our lives. Truly, animals cry out, "I am created." As Paul said in Romans 1:20, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, God has revealed himself to us through what he has made." God made the world full of wonders because he is wonderful. He made beautiful things because he is beautiful. He made things that are tremendously complex and mysterious because he is beyond our understanding. He made things we constantly marvel at because he is marvelous. He made things of enormous power because he is powerful. Truly, his eternal power and divine nature are on display within the creation to reveal himself to us. Praise the Lord, for he is good.